Hi, I'm Jack Cocciarella.
And I'm Aaron Parnas.
And this is Zoomed In. On this week's episode of Zoomed In, Aaron and I are going to talk about the organization by members of Congress in inciting the January 6th insurrection and Florida's pro-COVID Surgeon General. We have a lot to cover this week. Aaron and I are excited about this episode, so let's not waste any time. Aaron, let's zoom in.
Let's do it, Jack.
Aaron, let's hit the headlines.
Jack, let's just jump right in and talk about probably the biggest headline over the past week, and that's the new Rolling Stones article, which was an exclusive article and showed that the Sedition 7 caucus, as I like to call it, named 7 congresspeople, participated in dozens of planning meetings with January 6th protest organizers, members of Congress, and White House staff. Now, this is huge news. And I don't have the list of the Sedition 7 in front of me, but it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Andy Biggs, Mo Brooks, Paul Gosar, and I believe the final one is Louis Gohmert, I think
yes.
7. And this is huge news. Jack, what's your take?
Well, we knew that, or we had some suspicion that Marjorie Taylor Greene specifically, a couple of the freshman members of Congress, Lauren Boebert as well, were giving tours of the Capitol. We're having people, inviting them to, to talk about planning this Stop the Steal rally, is what they were calling it, this protest, even though this was a violent insurrection. So we had known before that they had some level of involvement in riling people up, like certain representatives, Mo Brooks being one of them, Madison Cawthorn as well, spoke at the Stop the Steal rally. They were saying this crowd has got fight in it. This crowd is gonna take up arms. This crowd is gonna go show members of Congress what we have to say. We're not gonna go down quietly, inciting insurrection. So we had known that and we had seen it on the day. But these revelations really show the level of involvement. This is going just past, incitement. This is going planning. There was planning involved. There was a war room making sure that it was not only just, a rally that, pressured some senators or some members of Congress, but this was something that was going to be carried out violently into our Capitol. This wasn't just a bunch of MAG idiots gathering to yell and scream lies. This was the real deal. This was an insurrection.
No, for sure. And I think people don't really, because we have like these one-off news stories or like this breaking news just pop up randomly, and people don't really realize the extent of the planning and the preparation and really all of the activities that have gone on in January 6th and the days leading up. So to really walk people through it, a week before the January 6th insurrection, Marjorie Taylor Greene posted a video as she was walking out of the White House, where she was quoted saying like, "Oh, we just had a great January 6th planning meeting with the president and other White House officials." That happened a week before. Then the day before, in the days leading up, Trump officials rented out a hotel room in the Willard Hotel, not the Trump Hotel, the Willard Hotel, to hide what they were doing, obviously, where they were strategizing what they were going to do on January 6th. At the same time, at the Trump Hotel, Senator Mike Braun, a newly elected senator from Indiana, not newly elected, but one of the freshman senators, quote unquote, he's only 2 years in, was meeting with Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and others at the Trump Hotel to strategize about how to object and how to decertify the election results. While all of that was happening, you had Charlie Kirk, Proud Boy members, and others essentially facilitating hundreds of right-wing white nationalists coming from all over the country to DC for this Stop the Steal event, which was hosted by Ali Alexander and other right-wing groups where Donald Trump spoke and others spoke. Now, in one-off events like these, okay, you can say, okay, whatever, it's just one meeting at the Trump Hotel, one meeting at the Willard.
But they were coordinated and they were organized. And you saw in reports coming out from Facebook about, God, there have been so many reports coming from Facebook about just the horribleness of that organization. But a lot of what you're seeing is also, talking about OAN, talking about QAnon, talking about, right-wing propaganda being spread across Facebook platforms. But there was so much organizing that went on Facebook when people were really trying to coordinate attacks, talking about what we're going to bring, talking about meeting offline, talking about how this is going to be, how we're going to set up this rally, this protest, people coming in. And Facebook really pushing that with their algorithm and suggesting for people to join those groups, which is absurd. Did you see in the Facebook report that there was something that they talked about where they created a Facebook profile where it was a white Christian mom from North Carolina, and within 2 days, Facebook's algorithm had pushed her to join QAnon, right? Like Facebook just feeds into this right-wing propaganda in such a significant and scary way that events like the January 6th insurrection are able to be organized with ease because they just keep on propagating these lies, and then people get put into these groups or get suggested and then they join them. And that's what you see in terms of this organization, is that this was a planned attack. This was a planned attack.
For sure, Jack. And I mean, I think from a legal perspective, I mean, there's so much that Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice really needs to do. I mean, thus far, we have not seen any charges of sedition or rebellion or even seditious conspiracy. And I would want Merrick Garland, I would want the Department of Justice to really look at 18 U.S. Code Section 2384, which is seditious conspiracy. And all it requires is more than one person, two or more people, conspiring, which is an agreement, essentially agreeing with one another to overthrow the government or to destroy the government. I mean, you have text messages. If I text you, Jack, and I say, let's go overthrow the Capitol, that is a conspiracy to overthrow the Capitol, right? Yeah. That's all the government needs to charge people under that title, under that code, for seditious conspiracy. So I think the fact that we haven't seen that yet is honestly really troubling to me. But I do think that this new Rolling Stones article, if true, about these 7 congressional members who were giving tours, who were participating in these planning sessions with rioters, that's the crime you charge them with. You don't charge them with sedition or rebellion exactly. Mm-hmm. It's a lot harder because they weren't the ones storming the Capitol. But you do charge them with seditious conspiracy. And when people say, okay, why not charge them with something more? When you think about seditious conspiracy, it's punishable for up to 20 years in prison. I mean, it's no joke. Yeah. And also at the same time, you have the 14th Amendment, which essentially says if you rebel against the government, you cannot be a sitting member of Congress. It's clear as day. And I think Congress needs to expel these members, and the Department of Justice needs to investigate these members.
And so we jump to, we are quick to, as we rightfully should, and, it's difficult in times when, the Republican Party exists as it does, as an oppositional a party that doesn't exist to govern, a party that just exists to be a roadblock and to oppose any good policy that's going to help the American people. But when you have a party that doesn't even exist, like the current GOP does now, and expulsion, of course, would take 2/3 House majority. And it just seems kind of impossible at this current level of, partisanship in the Republican Party. I don't even want to call it partisanship. It's difficult to even classify it right now when they're so fucking absurd. It's like, it's unable to be, it's ineffable. You cannot explain it. It does not make sense. But expulsion of Marjorie Taylor Greene, of a Mo Brooks, of a Gozar, of a Boebert is unlikely to happen in the current state of the GOP. Mm-hmm. And so you talked about the charges of sedition that could be brought forth. What are the ways legally, as our resident lawyer, Aaron, what are the ways legally that we move forward with holding these people accountable?
So, I mean, I think it's going to start in the select committee. Or actually, there are going to be 2 routes. One, there's going to be the select committee, which I'll talk about first. And then there's another route, which I'll talk about second. So regarding the select committee, all of these documents and all of this evidence that's coming out through either Rolling Stones or other avenues, select committee already has, right? The select committee probably has tons of more information than the public knows about. And if the select committee is seeing the possibility of these charges, select committee can issue criminal referrals to the Department of Justice and say, hey, look, these people did something wrong. Go investigate it, right? That's number one. And I think that will happen. Maybe not an exact criminal referral, but I do think that the select committee is going to come out with a report that is essentially going to be kind of like a guideline for the Department of Justice to issue an indictment, kind of like Mueller did with the Russia investigation. I mean, if the Department of Justice, if Trump wasn't president at the time, the Department of Justice could have taken that Mueller report and turned it into an indictment by changing a few words. Mm-hmm. And I think the select committee is going to do the same thing. So that's option one. Option two is really to look at, and I've said this before on our podcast, is to look at the rioters and the insurrectionists that have already been charged by the U.S. Attorney in D.C. and by Merrick Garland. Many of those folks are currently pending trial. Some of them are taking plea deals, and those who are taking plea deals, many of them are cooperating with the government. And these cooperating witnesses, the more you have, if it is true that Marjorie Taylor Greene and others conspired and met with these protest organizers. And these protest organizers are cooperating with the government. Then it's going to come up in conversation of, hey, did you meet with Marjorie Taylor Greene? What did you tell her? What happened? And in that case, the more people who cooperate, the more evidence that comes out through these investigations, that's how charges are going to be brought. And I think that is the more likely route, because I think the U.S. Attorney for D.C. and others have said repeatedly, hold off, do not crucify us just yet in a lot of ways, because this investigation will take time. Not all of the people who are charged are who have already been charged they're not the only ones who are going to be charged in this investigation. And there are going to be a lot more criminal charges and superseding indictments brought against the current capital defendants. That's going to pressure them to flip. And I think one day you might have one or two, if the evidence is there, to flip on Congress people. Because if you're facing 50 years in prison for trying to overthrow the government, or even 20 years in prison, are you going to do that for Marjorie Taylor Greene? Are you going to go spend time for Marjorie Taylor Greene? I sure as hell won't.
Oh, no, definitely not. I wouldn't do anything for Marjorie Taylor Greene, except, maybe fight to unseat her. But you talk about more people coming forward or possibly taking plea deals. We saw 5 or 6 former Trump aides coming forward this week saying that they're going to, agree to provide information and cooperate with this general procedure. So, we see what has just happened with Steve Bannon. We're seeing with this report that's coming out right now. We have talked about this being a slow-moving process. It has been way longer than it should have. But in terms of how we would like this to operate, you'd like to see if someone attacked our government and tried to overthrow a democracy, there would be immediate repercussions. But that's not the case. But I think you're starting to see more and more dominoes fall, and hopefully once they do, that pace can be picked up from it's not just 5 to 6 Trump aides, but you're having more people come forward, you're having more indictments, you're having more charges, and these investigations start to pick up and they really start to have momentum, and we can see people held accountable. And that may just be a matter of time, as you've talked about before. You know more about these proceedings than I do. But I think that as we're starting to see things moving, it'll just keep up, and then we will start to see those people held accountable.
Yeah, for sure. And this is how all criminal investigations work when you don't have like a smoking gun or piece of evidence. Like if you don't have a videotape of Marjorie Taylor Greene giving a tour, which I don't envision them having, and I've spoken about that before. If you don't have that already, then you have to get that evidence elsewhere. And a lot of the ways you get that evidence is through cooperating witnesses, through documents, through testimony. The news that the 5 former Trump White House officials are testifying is very big because A, that means they're waiving executive privilege if there is any, and B, they're really they're on their part, it's smart because they get to avoid any possible penalties, but also the select committee is really getting kind of an insight into what was happening on January 6th in the White House. And I think that could be a big deal. I mean, why was Marjorie Taylor Greene there a week before? Why was Mo Brooks wearing a bulletproof vest if he said he had no part of this, right? Like, why did Lauren Boebert tweet out where the location of Nancy Pelosi? I mean, there's so many questions that are still unanswered. But I bet you that the select committee and Merrick Garland and DOJ, they have answered many of these questions. And we'll see charges, we'll see indictments. I don't know how many, and I don't know against who, but it will come.
Yeah, and I think that I think we can take some, we can be a little encouraged by, we saw on January 6th, that was the fuck around stage. I think we're moving into the find out stage now. I think there's some finding out that's about to be happening with some of these insurrectionists. Hopefully, the Seditionist 7, as I think you did a good job coining that. But how do you think, before we move into our next topic next headline that we wanted to hit, how do you think this is going to be impacting, and it always comes back to this, but how do you think this is going to be impacting the way Democrats run in 2022? Because, very, very soon, next week, we have a big election in Virginia. And, Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, was speaking on, he was campaigning for Terry McAuliffe, and he was saying, I don't know how, talking about Glenn Youngkin, you can be this, I'm a dishwashing, fleece-wearing, hooping basketball player, and then quietly let the insurrectionists come to you, let the MAG idiots come to you, let the Trumpies endorse you, and try to do both those things at the same time. It's you can't be both those people, and he's trying to be. So how do we take that message that President Obama delivered so perfectly, as he always does, and carry that over into 2020 and make sure that and holding people accountable. We're not only, getting them out of Congress, but we're also, doing both to get them out of Congress and put them in jail, like doing those two things at once.
Well, I mean, number one, we got to have President Obama speaking more.
Yeah, can we just get more? I would like more President Obama everywhere. I mean, I miss him so much. I've seen President Obama speak one time. I saw him speak. He spoke in Orlando. It was in 2020, and it was incredible. There is something about being around President Obama. He's just got away with words, and oh man, that's what we need. Maybe if we could clone Barack Obama and just put him to campaign. We need a Barack Obama in Arizona. We need one in Florida. We're going to need one in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. Just get Barack all over. I like that plan. But go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
That's number one. But number two is I really think that we need to continue making these distinctions of like, look what you could have and look what we're running on, right? Like, you could have insurrection. You could have division. You could have Marjorie Taylor Greene as your governor. Or you can have you can work with us and build back better. Pick your poison, like red pill or blue pill. I think that's a great way to
kind of set it up, because you and I both agree, and we talked with our friend Rick Wilson a while back, and he was saying you have to make them own the crazy, right? Yeah. This is absolutely something you have to connect, but how do you do it? How do you play on both? How do you say we are working towards to be carbon neutral? But also Marjorie Taylor Greene is fucking nuts, and how to do both those things at the same time. Yeah. So I think what you have to do there is say, this is, and you set it up perfectly. This is what might happen if you don't show up to vote. This might happen. So you got to vote, and you're voting for these democratic policies, cutting child poverty in half, right? Protecting our climate, lowering prescription drug prices, doing all this incredible policy, passing all this great policy. If we expand, our majority in the Senate and the House, that's how we got to set it up, and that's how we have to communicate it. But like Rick said, like we've been saying, got to make them own the crazy. And speaking of owning the crazy, I think we need to jump to our home state of Florida. Aaron, you wanted to talk about the Surgeon General, so go ahead.
Yeah. So to give a little backstory to our listeners, State Senator Tina Polsky was recently diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer, and we had zoomed in, and everyone on our side, we're praying for her swift recovery. Because it's a terrible diagnosis. But so she was diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer. I believe it was last week now. A couple days after her diagnosis, the new Florida Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Ladipo, who's been known to be this anti-mask and anti-vax conspiracy theorist, handpicked by Ron DeSantis to run the Department of Health.
Of course.
In Florida, when you pick a Surgeon General, the Surgeon General has to be confirmed by the Senate, the Florida State Senate. And as part of his kind of like the way judges and justices do it up in DC, he went and visited every state senator's office. And one of the state senator's offices he visited in advance of this confirmation hearing was Tina Polsky. And Tina Polsky, coming off her recent breast cancer diagnosis, she asked Dr. Ladipo, hey, can you please wear a mask? I'm extremely high risk now. May have not been as high risk before my diagnosis, but I am now.
The smallest courtesy for safety. The smallest.
Please put on a mask. What did Dr. Ladipo do? He said no. And he made it a big deal, and he said, I will not wear a mask, and refused to put on a mask in her office, even though she was high risk, even though it was her office, and she asked. So that blew up, and obviously that was terrible. And the Republican Senate leader, Wilton Simpson, even came out with a statement bashing Ladipo, saying this was uncalled for. I mean, it was a bipartisan effort, really slamming these efforts, or slamming what Ladipo was doing. And just today, the Surgeon General released a statement where he said, and I quote, it is important to me to communicate clearly and effectively with people. I can't do that when half of my face is covered. So the Florida Surgeon General, with surgeon in his name, is a he can't communicate with people when half his face is covered. So when people are doing surgery, I'm going to say, if I'm a doctor and
you might need a little bit of communication. I don't know. I've watched Grey's Anatomy a couple times, and I think they get that stuff done. The drama of the life, I'm not sure if that communication is perfect. But, when they got to take care of business in the operating room, they can get it done with a mask on.
No, but literally, like you're at the dentist office, there's a dentist, there's an assistant. You're in surgery, you're at a doctor's office, there's a doctor, and there's an assistant. And they're almost always wearing masks. And
that's what they do. And they're for safety, to keep us safe.
Here's the thing. I could put on a mask right now, and you could put on a mask right now. And we're not even next to each other. And I bet you we can communicate properly.
I think we'd still have a great episode of Zoomed In, and y'all could hear us clearly. And for those of you who are not watching but listening right now, I bet you couldn't tell the difference if we were. I think it's ridiculous that this is classic. This is classic Ron DeSantis.
Correct.
If there's one thing that the governor does well, and there are not a lot, it's irony. That you just love to say that, I advocate for businesses, I advocate for personal freedoms, and then you come into my office and you won't wear a mask in my office. What does Ron DeSantis, does people who work for him, do they have any idea like how ridiculous that they look with everything that they do? This is classic DeSantis. And I think it's become evident. I think it's become abundantly clear that Republicans would like to elevate the reproductive rights of COVID over the reproductive rights of women. They care about they want COVID to reproduce and have reproductive rights. But when it comes to human beings, they don't want to protect their reproductive health. So that's going to be the policy platform of the Republican Party going forward. Is hurting people, letting COVID spread, and apparently not protecting your personal freedoms. I don't know what happened in the free state of Florida, Ron DeSantis, but I guess that's not holding true. So great job, Governor. Great pick. Great selection.
Well, thank God there are plenty of Democratic senators who have since come out and said, I will vote no on
as they should.
Unfortunately, the Republicans have a majority in the Senate, so unless I believe 3 or 4 flip, we're going to have him as our next Surgeon General, unfortunately. This is just an example of how these politicians continue to put personal politics ahead of public health and ahead of our personal interests. Now, just today, I got my booster shot, and there are thousands, millions of Floridians who don't believe in what the governor and Ladipo are spewing about vaccines, about masks, about COVID, about public health. So to all those who are listening or watching, and you kind of say, there's this GIF on Twitter that I've seen a lot where it's like Bugs Bunny the rabbit's like,
I was cutting off Florida. Yeah.
I see that and I'm like, listen, like I get it. I get your concerns and I get why you think Florida is just this mess, but you're not doing that to Texas. You're not doing that to other states that have a Republican governor, Republican legislature.
What would have happened if we did that to Georgia?
Right.
We wouldn't have a Senate majority right now. You cannot discount what's happening right now and the movements that are the momentum that we're picking up in Florida to flip this state blue, to defeat Ron DeSantis, to defeat Marco Rubio. In 2024, defeating Rick Scott is going to be very, very nice. Getting rid of Voldemort, that'd be great.
But speaking of this momentum, just today, after this whole back and forth with Dr. Ladipo, the pastor who spoke at Ron DeSantis' inauguration, who was a registered Republican up until today, left the Republican Party. He is now registered independent. There is a movement away from the Republican Party. It might not be the Democratic Party, but it's away from the Republican Party.
And that's a start.
And that's a start right now. And as we build the infrastructure and educate more people on Democratic policies, it'll be from independents to Democrats, and you'll see that shift more. But Jack, before we end off, we have to talk about probably the biggest news of the week.
What's that, Aaron?
So 2 days ago, Sunday night, or
3
days ago when this episode releases, a Dartmouth student by the name of Jack Cottrella.
It's a great school.
Okay, Jack. Dartmouth student pressured and asked Madison Cawthorn whether or not, why he continued perpetrating lies about the January 6th election. And, lucky for us, we have that Dartmouth student here to talk about this video that went viral, went on NBC, got, I think, almost 2 million views now on Twitter. So, Jack, how does it feel to be a political superstar?
So when I initially found out that Madison Cawthorn was coming to our campus, I was shocked. I was unsettled. I was a bit upset. But I thought about it and I said to myself, I was like, I cannot just not go, right? Mm-hmm. If Madison Cawthorn is going to come and spout lies to Dartmouth students, and this was not put on by the school itself. This was the Dartmouth Republicans, a club here on campus. Mm-hmm. Exercising their right to have speakers come. And I don't really, believe in that speaker that much, but I knew if he was going to be here and he was spouting lies, I had to show up and I had to hold him accountable. Mm-hmm. So the event was going to run for an hour. It was, 8:01 and they're like, okay, we're going to wrap this thing up. And so someone in the back just kind of said, "Hey, can we ask some questions?" And Cawthorn was like, "Yeah, sure. Like, we'll just fire some questions off. We got a couple more minutes." And so him and I kind of locked eyes. I was sitting in the second to front row, and I just kind of waved at him and just kind of gave him a like, "Hey, can I ask you a quick question?" And he must have been like, "Oh, I'm going to get another softball. I can just, ramble and lie and propagate attacks on our democracy." I stood up. I asked him why he keeps lying to his constituents, why he wants to keep attacking our democracy, and he inaccurately cited the Constitution. As you know, Aaron, I pressed him on it. He threw a nice straw man at me and asked me if I like the Constitution, if I hate the Constitution. I asked Representative Cawthorn how much he liked the Constitution when he was attacking our democracy on January 6th, and he was flustered. He had to be checked in on afterwards. One of the hosts of the event went over, just said, "Are you Madison? Are you good?" He was flustered. It's deer in the headlights for Madison Cawthorn. And that's what we got to keep doing. We got to keep holding people accountable, right? In every interaction, in every town hall, if you want to do it on Twitter, if you want to do it by even just calling the office of your representative, if they are as crazy or crazier than Madison Cawthorn, giving them a call, tell them how you feel. But we got to keep putting pressure on these people. We cannot let them walk around and just continue to spread the big lie and do whatever they want without consequences. That's what we have to do. Every moment we can, we have to be holding them accountable. And I just thought that was an opportunity I had to take. And it's never a bad thing to just embarrass a Republican in front of a bunch of people. And I was fortunate that I was able to do that. Now, Madison Cawthorn hopefully will never be making his return to Dartmouth.
Well, Madison Cawthorn, if you're listening to this, come on our Zoomed In podcast.
Yeah, let's talk about the Constitution, Madison.
Let's talk about the Constitution. Let's talk about the insurrection. Let's talk about all that. You're invite open all the time. Madison Cawthorn, you're always welcome to debate Jack again.
And lose.
And I would raise my hands to bow down to you right now, but my arm, I cannot lift it because it is so
From the booster shot. Did you get a free Krispy Kreme donut? Did you go get one?
No, I've gotten like about 120 this year.
As you should.
It's going to be very sad. We only have about 64 days or so left in the year.
Really? I got to take advantage of those then. Yeah, it's only Dunkin' Donuts around me. And I love it. Hey, New England, Dunkin' Donuts changed my life. Incredible.
Yeah. But with that, Jack, I'm in the presence of a political superstar. And, thank you to all of you for listening. And we just hit the headlines. This was great, Jack.
Time for Tweets of the Week.
Let's do it.
And now it is time for Tweets of the Week. Our first tweet comes from ACYN, and he is quoting a snippet from Barack Obama's speech when he was campaigning on behalf of Terry McAuliffe last week. President Obama said, "You can't run ads telling me you're a regular old hoops playing, dishwashing, fleece wearing guy, and then quietly cultivate support from those who seek to tear down our democracy." That is an apt analysis of Trumpy Glenn Youngkin, who is going to be losing next week in the Virginia gubernatorial race to Terry McAuliffe.
And Jack, before we jump into your next tweet of the week, I just have to say a quick message from a short group that we wish would sponsor us, and that is Nerds Candy.
Okay, I'm the only one who can ask for sponsors from snack and treat and dessert companies. That's it.
If you are listening, please go purchase some Nerds gummy clusters.
It's not an official sponsor.
Only
Oreos. Only Oreos are our official sponsor. You stop it.
Okay.
We only love Oreos.
Next tweet.
Our next tweet comes from Robert Reich, who says, "U.S. billionaire wealth surged by a cool 70% during the pandemic, and we're somehow still debating whether we should tax wealth." Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that the top 1% of 1% of all Americans benefited the greatest during the pandemic, while the rest of us suffered. And I think it's time to tax the rich. I think that's infinitely clear. Our next tweet, John Collins says, "Remember when every congressional Republican voted against pandemic relief payments to struggling families? I hope you do. Never forget. Don't forget what the Republicans have done. Don't forget what they haven't done. And we will hold them accountable when we unseat them in 2022 or 2024. We are going to get this done." And then our final tweet is coming from our good friend Keith Edwards, who says, "Police officers are 5 times as likely to have died from COVID than to have died from gunshot wounds since the beginning of the pandemic. If you really back the blue, then support vaccinations."
Oh,
Republicans never live up to the little messages that they deliver. Back the blue. They didn't back the blue when it was Capitol Police officers, and they're not with vaccinations. Thank you so much. That was Tweets of the Week. And that is our show. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether you are listening as this has dropped on Wednesday on Apple, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, or whether you're tuning in live right now on Thursday on Twitter. Thank you so much for watching, listening, being a part of the Zoomed In podcast family. You listen, our subscribers, our followers, you guys make the show happen. And we are so thankful for this family that we are creating and growing every single week. And we would also like to say a quick thank you to our producers at MeidasTouch and our editor, Adam Sultan.
Yes.
They help us get this thing done every week, and we could not do it without them. And so with that being said, Aaron, where can the people find you?
At Aaron Parnas, AARONPARNAS on all my social media platforms. What about you, Jack?
You can find me getting in fights with Madison Cawthorn, or you can find me on Twitter at JD Cocciarella. That's JDCOCCHIARELLA. And if you would like to give us a review of the show, please do. Please drop a comment on or add us on Twitter, drop a comment, a review on wherever you're listening to this podcast. And also, please do not forget to subscribe so you can be the first to hear Zoomed In every week, or just turn on post notifications for Aaron and I, and you can get these videos live on Twitter on Thursday. Again, thank you to MeidasTouch. Thank you to Adam. Thank you, Aaron. And thank you all for listening. And we will see you next week. Thank you for zooming in.